Yo, what's up everybody? David McNally here, doing the first 4-shot pickleball live stream from home, doing an AMA. We'll see if starting at 7 p.m. was the right choice. This is all very just experimental, just trying to find a new way to kind of talk about pickleball and connect with the people in the pickleball community that I love so much. So thank you for watching, and we're just going to get kind of right into it. I already have some questions that some people asked on the Facebook page. What's up, Christy? So the first question I got was from Steve Emmons. Shout out to Steve Emmons. He says, give us your takeaway from watching the pros. What details do you see in their games that we can work on to get better? This is actually really a great question because not only have I been fortunate enough to see the pros in person, most recently at the PPA in Charlotte, I also spent a bunch of time watching pro pickleball, and honestly even just high-level pickleball. Like some of my other friends' live streams are making it out to big tournaments, so I would love to just watch pickleball. And the things that kind of stick out to me the most, obviously, besides some of the more kind of obvious things that people are just usually much more athletic or much taller or, you know, have a D1 tennis background. I'm trying to give some answers here that maybe you haven't heard anywhere else. So one thing that I really noticed about the pros is their movement. It just is very different from what you'll see in kind of your local rec games. And that means from how compact their swings are, to their footwork being very simple, very repeatable, and very balanced, and just expert timing on the contact that they make with the balls. Like, for example, when I was in PPA this past weekend, I don't think I heard or saw one kind of shank or mishit all tournament. Granted, I didn't watch that much of the pros, but just the ability that they have to make contact in the sweet spot is something that I think really separates them from what I've seen in person. Another big thing that the pros do very well is they have excellent chemistry. This is not a secret, but one thing that kind of separates what I see from the local tournaments here in Virginia and the ones I've done elsewhere is that a lot of times the people that I know who are playing with different partners. And I'm not trying to say that's not a fun thing to do, or it's not a valid thing to do, because of course you want to try to experimenting with new people. And no, I'm still talking about pickleball. But just when you look at the top pro levels, you see the same partners partnering up consistently. Ben and Colin Johns, probably the most recognizable one. Of course, in the women, you have, actually the women are kind of mixing up a little bit more, but you saw Catherine Parento and Leah Jansen together this weekend winning gold. I don't think that's the first time that they play with each other. Could be wrong though. But you'll notice that these partnerships that they make with each other are, not only are they very good players individually, but they definitely synergize with each other, meaning that they bring, like, the sum of their parts are greater than the parts of themselves. And I think a lot of times that what people kind of think about when they make partnerships more more locally, or just kind of what I've seen, is that, you know, two people are like, hey, you're a good player, I'm a good player, let's get together and be great players together. But that does not happen all the time. So chemistry is very, very important, and that is something that the pros do very well. I don't think you would see like toxic partnerships last for very long. Also, I just think the pros are just kind of more defense first. Even when I got to watch this past weekend, like their drops aren't perfect. Their drops aren't something that I haven't seen before. Instead, their drops are in. They're just making their way up to the kitchen very, very slowly, very methodically, and they really trust their defense. Like if they put the ball up a little high, it might take them another couple shots to get up there, but sure enough, like they aren't just attacking kind of these marginal balls very often. They're more so just trusting their defense and forcing that kind of 50-50 position at the kitchen, and just are confident that they can kind of play better defense than their opponents. And one of the last things that I think I'm going to try to, I think about this a bunch, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this AMA, is just to kind of put this out there, is I think they're just so strong mentally, and their focus is remarkable. I think, you know, people love to kind of like harp on how athletic people are, or how talented they are, or how like beautiful their strokes are, but I think really what kind of, and those are all true, definitely, and those all help, but I think really like the elite players have just incredibly strong minds and stay focused and stay confident just from beginning to end of every match that they play. And even one thing I can share from being at PPA, like I actually got to see Tyson McGuffin and on the singles day, and he was kind of walking around, and so I decided to say what's up to him, and he was super duper friendly, just such a great guy, and I really appreciate that he said hi to me. But besides that, I kind of noticed that a lot of the pros had their AirPods in, weren't really making eye contact with a lot of people, even I think people that they knew. And while they were waiting for their next match, they weren't socializing, they weren't checking their phones, you know, they weren't messing around or doing anything. They were doing what they needed to do to stay focused, with their music or whatever they were doing, just to kind of stay in their zone. And sure enough, when it was their time to play, they could bring that focus and stay mentally strong, kind of no matter what was happening around them. So thanks for that question, Steve. We're going to move on to a question, kind of two questions in one. They're similar. Scott Huff asked this question. He's a local guy here from Fredericksburg, Spotsy, Stafford area. He said, I would appreciate your thoughts on player development, specifically for the 3-0, 3-5 players that want to improve their game and play competitively. What are the key skill areas that should be refined in order to reach the next level? What does that path look like in terms of drilling, training, and rec play with advanced players? Do you recommend private coaching over clinics? Thank you. I'm going to read the next question and kind of answer them at the same time. Greg Baker Jr., another guy, great guy. Don't confuse him with Greg Baker Sr., another guy from Fredericksburg area here. He says, what's the biggest thing I can work on to improve? But then he asks more broadly, what's the thing that your average 4-0 player looking to break into 4-5 can work on to yield the greatest transformative positive result? These are great questions. I love to, first off, I just love to see that these guys are hungry to get better. That like motivates me. That just gets me fired up. So I love to see that. So to kind of answer, and it's essentially about getting better, and at different levels. So from to Scott's question, 3.0 to 3.5 level, what I notice, and I think the most important thing to do is just soften up and slow down the game for your opponents. Especially if you're a more offensively minded player. So I think a lot of time the 3.0, 3.5 players, especially men, will kind of like rely on their just like strength and just kind of more like aggressive style to kind of like pressure opponents and win points, which is certainly valid. But I think sometimes like they take that kind of shortcut of being aggressive and not really developing the defensive kind of part of the game, like the more finesse, like slowing it down, forcing your opponents to not be able to attack a shot, with the third shot drop, etc. So I think a lot of times like people can kind of be like a big fish in a little pond and just be a little bit too offensively minded and just kind of like resist and struggle when, you're going to find someone who can just block back your aggressive shot and you're kind of caught floundering, not knowing what to do when your aggression isn't working. So softening up the game, meaning like even if you can drive the ball and bully your opponents, and you can beat them that way, look to soften up the game, hit your third shot drops, work your way up to the kitchen, and try to win the game in a more defensive way. And I think that's going to open up a lot of avenues for growth. Certainly, like in terms of Scott asked, like should he, in terms of drilling and training and rec play. So certainly, I think drilling third shot drops is really important for 3.0s and 3.5s, especially like I work on that myself to this day. It's a very, very fundamental thing, and I don't think I'll ever stop drilling that, trying to refine it. I recommend that you work on your third shot drops, you work on your fifth shot drops, you work on your seventh shot drops. However many shots it's going to take you to work up to the kitchen is really important. And I think one mistake that 3.0s and 3.5s make is that they kind of watch pros and they watch how they dink so much, and they're like, okay, so they use their valuable time to actually drill dinking. But the problem is, if you can't work on your third shot drops and just work on transitioning from the baseline to the kitchen, all that work that you're putting in dinking isn't really going to be realized because you can't kind of force the game into a dinking rally. So really work on your drops, work on your transitions, and then kind of once you have that down better, then I think it's important to work on your dinking and your touch and your placement. So thanks to Scott for that question. We're going to move on to Greg's now. Greg Jr. And this is kind of tailored to him and also just more broadly for 4.0 plus players. If you made it to the 4.0 level, just first off, like that's a high level. Like I think a lot of times people watch the pros or they watch the better players in their area and they're just like, think they're trash or something compared to them. But, it's still impressive. It's not easy. So enjoy that. Like, you earn that. That's a high level. So my advice for development is just take an honest inventory of your skill set. If you're not sure about your own personal skill set, take film of yourself and try to assess it yourself. If you don't think you're doing a good job, ask players around you that you trust, ideally better players, but honestly just someone who you think has a good eye for the game and who has your best interest at heart, who will give you who will really tell you like what you do well and what you don't do well. Once you do that, you'll find out what your strengths are and more importantly what your weaknesses are. You want to find time to drill and what you think is the weakest part of your weaknesses, your greatest weakness. And I think it's important to note here that it might not be a mechanical issue. It might not be, oh, I'm turning my wrist over too much on my dinks. Like, it very well may be kind of a more like psychological part of the game, like your shot selection. Are you being too passive in certain spots? Are you being too aggressive in certain spots? And when you do end up playing rec, because after all, like, we don't all drill as much as we should, myself included, I want you to think about playing with an intention of improving your weaknesses and forcing the points in the games to those areas of your game that you need to work on most. And then let's say in your competitive games, like your tournaments or like your local ladders, or just, you know, if you're doing a DUPR match or something. I've never done that, but that's what apparently the kids are doing these days. Then work to construct points that let your strengths shine through. And also find a partner who wants the same goal. Like, find a partner who recognizes your strengths and wants to play a game that sets up your strengths. This is a lot of talking by myself, so this is definitely a little strange, but these are good questions, and I'm going to kind of go on this a little bit more, just like more broadly for just kind of player development. The mental game, I think, is so important. Just like controlling your emotions, just focusing on what you can control and kind of accepting what you can't control, be that net clips, be that the wind, be that your partner, even be that like maybe you're just not feeling very well. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep. Like, addressing those things and making the most of it and accepting it and playing your best that you can at the time. Accept losing with grace. I think it's, I think people take losses very, very tough, and it can kind of break your confidence. So a lot of what I see kind of holding back 4-0, 3-0, 3-5 players isn't even necessarily that they can't do it physically. It's that they have a mental block. And sometimes they're even aware of that mental block. But so it's not necessarily like, oh, I got to find time on the pickleball courts to get better to the next level. Like, sometimes it's honestly going to be just like taking a step back, which kind of leads me to my next point. Like, exercising gratitude, I think, is a really good way to kind of accept loss in pickleball and maybe even in life. Just, this is something that I've kind of been doing. Like, you know, when I go in 2 and out, or when I just, you know, underperform, or when I know what I need to do and then I just don't do it, is I really just try to zoom out of the tournament, zoom out of the game, zoom out and just say, look, like, I am healthy enough to play. I have time to play this game that I love and so many other people's love. And the more you zoom out, the more, you know, I'm just happy to be alive. Like, you know, you really kind of can't beat yourself up over a match if you're just kind of happy to be alive. So really, really, everyone, no matter what level you are, no matter what you want to do, just really try to focus on your mental game. And I think you're just going to have a lot of results and kind of unlock a lot of kind of parts of your game that you already had, but you're just kind of allowing yourself to tap into that. And another big thing is when you do find yourself playing rec games, don't ice out the better players, meaning hit the better players the ball. I personally like to kind of play the shot in rec and not necessarily like play the player. It's not, you know, I want the game to kind of just flow naturally. But if anything, like, it makes sense, I would recommend to hit the ball more often to the better player, because you want to test your best shots against them. you want to kind of learn from what they're doing. You want to see their best shots. You want to see if you can handle their best shots and their misdirections, and you want to see how they set up a nice point. And the less you give those players opportunities to do so, the less you're going to learn. Perhaps the more games you're going to win, but again, like, don't squander your opportunities for your own development, and don't squander your opportunities just to learn from other players. You want to do that. You want to kind of put your ego aside in those rec games. Like, you should be okay. You should rather lose a rec game and kind of learn something than win your rec game, but then essentially squander an opportunity to learn from somebody. And I'll just tell you what, like, when I've played in games where people don't hit me the ball, and because they want to win, I think, and I'm not as likely to be as friendly with those people. I'm not going to be a dick about it, but if I could kind of tell that someone wants to get better, and if you really yourself want to get better, you're gonna make more friends. You're gonna kind of earn the respect of players who are better than you by doing that, and that's a big part of just player development. So, and the last thing for Scott, he asked me about, do I think that clinics are better than lessons? And I have to admit, I've never done a lesson or a clinic myself, but I actually do want to do lessons. I'm not opposed to that, and I actually would do a clinic too. But my suspicion is that a lesson from a good coach would be more value, just because they can kind of more assess like what you need to do, especially if they know you. They know you well. They probably know your strengths and weaknesses pretty well, and can kind of like construct some sort of like regimen for what you need to do. And a clinic is kind of a little bit more like of a broad tool, not as focused, but I think there's a lot of value to derive of that. And especially if you like a pro and they're doing a clinic in your town, certainly go ahead and do it. I think it's a value. So whatever you think you need to do, go and do it to get better. Here, I haven't checked the live stream here. All right, what do we got? My mom, thank you, Ema. Love you, Christy. Shout outs to Christy. A lot of love and respect for Christy here. Lance, what's up, Lance? If you could make a rule change or two to pickleball, what change would you make? Shout out to Lance. He's the director of pickleball at Pickleballers up in Chantilly. Go check it out if you haven't been there. It's Chantilly, Virginia. It's a good question. If you could make, I'm sorry, I'm being nitpicky. If you could make a rule change or two, honestly, if I had that power right now, I probably wouldn't make any changes. I don't really have any great ideas, although I will use this opportunity to answer another question, which my brother Daniel has asked. I think, so he asked, should pickleball switch to rally scoring with a freeze point, and how would that work in doubles where each side serves twice? So what he's referencing is kind of a rule from a game that he and I love, and our other friends that we came up with. We used to play back in the Dizzy, back in the aughts. So, and that game is called Volleyball. It's not volleyball. It is volleyball, meaning like walls. You essentially are playing volleyball on a racquetball court. It is incredibly fun. If you live next to a YMCA, there's a good chance that they have a volleyball net and a racquetball court. So go check that out and have a lot of fun playing it. And the rule in that sport is that it's rally scoring up until I think the 18th point. You're playing a game to 21, win by 2. And so it's rally scoring up until 18, meaning every serve is a point. And then once one team scores 18 points, then it's called the freeze point, and and then from that point on, every subsequent point is played like pickleball scoring, where you only score on your serve. So this actually could be a nice way to kind of marry the idea of like rally scoring and what a lot of people like about pickleball, which is pickleball scoring. So yeah, Lance, I'm not sure I would make a universal change. Like I don't have anything that I'm so pressed to change about pickleball, but I do think that could be a very fun kind of wrinkle to the game. But again, like I would like to kind of test it out for a while and introduce it to people and see what they think. But yeah, I think that actually would be very fun, because you get, like, games could go quicker, but at the same time too, like you could still make big comebacks. And I think that's part of the criticism with rally scoring, is that it'd be very, very hard to make a comeback, and comebacks are one of those things that make sports like very fun and very exciting. So this is kind of one of these ways that where you still can have like a nice flow to the game, but then still have really epic comebacks with this freeze point. So thanks for asking that question, Lance. Daniel said, bro, for real, how are you so good at pickleball? My brother's such a troll. He says, would you rather play pickleball with an iron frying pan or a ping pong paddle? That's really funny. I would rather play with I think I'd rather play with a frying pan. Fun fact, like about maybe 2 years ago, I did go out and play pickleball with a frying pan. I had a video idea to make a video with like playing pickleball with household items. One of them was indeed a frying pan, and I remember that frying pan had some pretty good pop, and I think it still would be USA approved. I think the ping pong paddle, not USA approved. Compression on the surface. So just like my carbons banned, I don't want to have my ping pong paddle banned. So that's the answer to that. It's kind of a little tough to see. Okay, Brian Hasty, shout out to Brian Hasty. He says soft taco or crunchy taco and best hot sauce. Ooh, fun fact, we had taco night tonight, and we had soft corn tortillas, and yeah, man, just the best. I'm sorry, like maybe actually the best is like the chalupa, where you get some of the soft taco with cheese and the crunchy. I'm a big why just one when you can have two? So probably both. Let's see who we got here. Daniel asks, how is high level pickleball in 5 years going to look different from now? It's actually a good question. I think that it's going to be a lot more aggressive. I think that you already are kind of seeing that trend a little bit. I'm a big fan of the Waters family, Anna Lee and Lee. I love watching them play, and I think that they kind of like pissed off a lot of pickleball purists by just like kind of banging, right? At the high level. I think a lot of people were kind of rooting for them to not do well, because they weren't right as like graceful and as defensive as a lot of the pros are today and how the game is played today. But I think that's kind of like a little bit of a like a looking glass into the future, is that players are just, they're able to attack more off the bounce. They're able to just attack balls that are bouncing very low, and ultimately, like, I think it's just going to be a lot more aggressive. I think you're going to see more and more kind of top tennis players coming in and like eating all of people like me's lunches. I'm specifically thinking of that James Ignatowicz kid who came in bronze at, maybe it was at South Carolina APP. I think he's like a junior in college, and he has only been playing pickleball for 6 months, and just looked like an absolute stud in singles. So I think you're going to see a lot. Anna Bright's another girl who comes to mind, just a high-level pickleball player, or high-level tennis player who is now a very high-level pickleball player. So I think you're going to see a lot more of those people. I guess those are all kind of obvious observations. I think it's also going to be like pretty global. I think that kind of one thing that the pandemic showed was just how like easy it is to play pickleball. Like I heard a lot of stories of people just kind of setting up a net in their cul-de-sac. I've seen a lot of things on Facebook about like Pickleball India, and I have seen some like, pretty low budget setups, but hey, you got kids playing there, you got, teens playing there, adults playing there. And, you got a billion people who like love paddle sports. And, yeah, it's exciting to see. I hope it becomes more international. I think you will see it being more popular internationally, like lower cost to entry of tennis, not as much like kind of prestige associated with tennis that maybe like people abroad don't feel like they're part of or anything like that. So it's exciting to think about. And I wish I had some better answers, but those are just the ones that come to the top of my head. Lance, thank you. Brad, no spin serve. Have some questions about the spin, or have some questions I'm going to answer about the spin serve. I do wonder why Brad Barker, shout out to Bradford Barker, shout out to William Bradford Barker. Love him. He is another great local player here. If you need your chimney swept, shout out to Advanced Chimneys. Go check them out. Yeah, let's get right into that. We got some people talking about volleyball. Yeah, for real. It would be kind of sad to look in a crystal ball and see pickleball like where volleyball is now, where people heard about it for a while. And I remember seeing some like highlight reels from the 80s on YouTube, and I think there was a lot of hype about it. People wanted to get it into the Olympics, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't caught on. So we got to keep promoting pickleball, and so we don't go to the way of the volleyball or the dodo. So let me actually just. These are great. Thank you for the questions in the comments. I'm going to keep checking those out. But just to Brad's point, I got 2 questions about serves. So let's just get into that. Emily McNally, who is my sister-in-law, love her very much. I'm missing her nephew's preschool graduation to do this, so shame on me. She asks, should spin serves be banned at all levels? If not, should it be allowed at the pro level? Greg Baker Sr., not Greg Baker Jr., another great guy out here in Fredericksburg area, he asks more on Emily's question regarding the serve, with how difficult it is to really tell if a serve is legal or not, with belly buttons not being exposed, which maybe that should be a rule. And side-arming, low to high, making contact below the wrist, the whole spin argument, etc. Should the drop bounce serve be enforced for all serving? I'm not asking what you prefer. I'm more asking what is the best pickleball overall. For officiating and making pickleball skill more about the play after the serve than the serve itself. I know that in tennis this would never fly, but also in tennis we do not have so many rule limitations like we do in pickleball. If using that argument, why not just go overhead serve in pickleball then? Great question. Lots to kind of unpack there. Yeah, man, I will say, kind of tying back to my experiences at PPA this weekend. So I did play pro singles, which the PPA pro singles, any pro event in the PPA spin serves are banned. And therefore, when I was practicing for this tournament, I just decided, like, I had a spin serve. It wasn't very special, but in anticipation for the PPA, I was just using my regular serve, and I was trying to push it a little deeper, maybe push it with a little bit more pace, a little bit more topspin, picking different spots. But largely, I kind of stopped developing my spin serve, and I honestly kind of forgot about it because no one really in this area that I know and play with regularly does a spin serve. So after going to PPA, and I played in the pro event, obviously I didn't see any spin serves. The next event I played was 5-0 singles with my buddy PJ down in Richmond. Shout out to PJ. The first match of the day, we faced off a guy who had a massive spin serve. That gave us a bunch of problems, and probably half the points that they scored on us were just right off of his spin serve. Like, either aced us, and he did have a couple clean aces, and the team that ended up knocking us out of the tournament, one of the players had also a massive spin serve. So that was very consequential, and they got 6 points right off the bat with the spin serve in a game to 15, which is very consequential. So, so essentially, again, now it's kind of right back in my head and thinking about it a bunch. And yeah, I will say before this PPA tournament, I was in the camp that, hey, spin serves are, just a new development of the game, a new evolution of the sport. I was kind of in the camp that a lot of people who were very resistant to it were being a little bit, I don't know, just a little bit too old school in their thinking, and kind of didn't want the game to grow much. I guess that was kind of my impression of it. But after my experiences this weekend, it was really that, like, compounded with, like, how cramped the courts that we got to play on were at the PPA, meaning that, like, we played on courts, me and my friend PJ at 5-0, we played all our matches were on courts that had 2 pickleball courts per half of a tennis net. So it was very close quarters. We had those, like, tennis curtains all around us. The tape was very slick. And yeah, just overall, like, the court conditions, the court was in good shape, actually. It was newly surfaced and it was gritty, which also means that the spin that people generate off their spin serves are going to catch and kick all the more. I will say that the spin serve, it felt overpowered. It really did. It really changed the game in a disproportionately favorable way for the people who were doing the spin serves, and anyone who wasn't using the spin serves was essentially, like, inflicting a self-penalty on themselves for not having developed one or not using one. And so I think that if you can't enforce the boundaries around the court, to have a certain basic, like, area around the court to maneuver, because that's a lot of how the spin serve gets returned, right? If you don't have enough, it's like a lot of the people who don't return the spin serves right, they will kind of not step off of it enough to let it fully rotate through, or they're just kind of right on top of it anyways, which isn't a good way to return any serve, let alone a spin serve. So when you are confined by the environment around you, I feel like a spin serve should be banned, honestly. And I think if you have some sort of, like, agreed upon, like, okay, let's say you have 5 feet behind the baseline, which honestly, even on a regular tennis, like, if there was only one court to pickleball court per half of a tennis net, a lot of times you're actually not going to have enough room behind you on a tennis net to return the serve the way that you want to. So maybe if a tournament doesn't have, or a tournament venue doesn't have enough space around it, then it should be banned. But really, like, I don't know. It still seems like the jury's out. I'm still kind of torn about it, honestly. I don't really know what's the best thing to do, and it is kind of curious to me that the PPA like bans it in their pro event and then allows it in their amateur events. And I kind of like more what APP is doing overall, which is allowing it everywhere and just kind of letting it see how it goes. So, yeah, it's complicated, and I don't really know. And Greg Senior, he makes a lot of great points. You know, just in general, like there's a lot of rules about the serve, and you know, you or I know just as much. Like if you have a rule but it's not easily enforced, like what good is the rule? So, right, you don't know where people's belly buttons are. You know, a lot of times these refs who are making the call are standing at the net and don't have the best angle to really know if you're hitting up on it. If you're right, if your paddle's below your wrist, all those things, like are you imparting spin on it? Sometimes it can be a little tough to see. So, right, with a drop serve, and that's very easy to enforce. I actually really like that, Greg. I think that maybe that actually would be a good way to kind of make everyone happy in a way, except for like the Zanes of the world, like the Zanesaw Ride or Diers. So I do think that it's important to make it be easy to officiate, and I do feel like you can still make some pretty tricky serves. Like shout out to Jonathan Medina Alvarez, the guy from Richmond here. He was a very high level tennis player not that long ago, and he has one of the meanest serves I've ever seen. Spin serve, just regular serve, drop serve. And this guy, Jonathan, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his name now, but he lets it drop and he absolutely just rips it like a ground stroke, and he has mean ground strokes. So it's not to say that you can't even have a good serve off of a drop serve. So yeah, actually, you know what? I kind of do like that. I do like that. I think it's easy to enforce. It's easy to teach. I think a lot of times now when people are trying to learn the serves, it's very hard to explain it to people, which that's not a good way to kind of grow the sport going into the future. Like you want to have kind of clear, simple rules. So yeah, Greg, actually, I agree with you. I don't like the idea of an overhead serve just because then it makes it way too tennis-y. People are just going to think that it's just too tennis-y in my opinion. And I also think it's going to require like too much athleticism. And that is a nice kind of part of the game, is that there's like a low barrier to entry of athleticism. So I think if we allowed overheads, I guess, right. I just think it might be a little bit too much of a turnoff for people. So yeah, Brad, you're not into the spin serves. I get it more than I ever have. And we'll see how it plays out. I'll tell you what though, didn't spin serve on Thursday at Pro Singles. I didn't spin serve on Saturday in 5-0 doubles, men's doubles. On Sunday, when I played 5-0 mixed, best believe I brought my spin serve out on Sunday. Just because it felt like, hey, if you can't beat him, join him. And sure enough, I got a couple errors off the return to serve for points, like easy points. And did it feel a little dirty? Not really, honestly. It just felt like I was kind of updating to the times. Like I don't want to get left behind by being a purist. I want to be competitive, and I want to evolve as the game is evolving. So yeah, I don't know, man. I'm with you, Brad. It's tough, and I think Greg Senior makes a lot of great points. Let's go here to the chat. Freddie Everett, Big Fred. Shout out to Big Fred up in Maryland. Congrats. I saw you winning gold up in Frankie's tournament. That's huge, man. Congratulations. Do I think rally scoring will... excuse me. Do I think rally scoring... This is not very good software. Will go mainstream in pickleball. Do I think it will? I don't know. I think it might, and it kind of might be some like top-down, heavy-handed thing. Like this, the USAPA says so, and that might be it. That might be pressured by like the pros who want it that way to make it more consumable for television. I could see that happening. Have you, like, I'll ask, like, has anyone who's watching played a rally scoring game? Like, what did you play it to? Was it weird? Did you like it? Throw the questions back at the people. I personally just never even tried it. So I can't have much of an opinion about it. Although as I said, like the volleyball rally scoring with the freeze point might be the best marriage of the two. Let's see, we got Greg Jr. Come on, Facebook. Okay. Greg Jr. Okay, I missed the beginning of the stream, so apologies if someone already asked, but thoughts on DUPR? Overall, I kind of respect that DUPR exists. Like, I'm glad that they exist. I think maybe it's like the best rating system, but I actually haven't really done much research of it. I've never claimed my DUPR account. I don't entirely know how they do things. I like that you can, the fact that you can do rec games with your friends and log them for rating. That sounds like a good idea. I think there's some potential for abuse there, but overall I think it would be fine. I'll just kind of say more broadly though, I think rating systems are just ass. Like I think they're just bunk. I think people put way too much of their own value into what their rating says. I think people waste too much energy on sandbaggers. I think people just stress out too much about like 1,000th of a point for some made up number. And it kind of goes back to the mental game. Like, I think a lot of times people in tournaments are just like, get so upset about like, I can't believe I lost to this dude. He's a XXX and I'm a YYY and now my rating's going to be ZZZ. It's like, no one cares. Honestly, no one cares. You shouldn't care. And just kind of more in general, like, you know, just focus on like what you can control. Like, you can't control your DUPR rating in a sense. Like, you can control how well you play, and upsets happen, and people can be like, I don't know, a 5-0 team can play like a 4-0 team. A 4-0 team can play over their head to like a 4-5 team, or maybe even a 5-0 team, you know, a 5-0 game. Like, it's all about how it is in the moment, and it's all about kind of how you are on average. And, you know, actually, Greg, when I was answering your question earlier, like taking some notes before I started the stream, I was just thinking, like, you know, there's, you know, in theory, there's no one player. Like, let's say you're a 4-0 player. That means you have a 4-0 serve. It means you have a 4-0 return to serve. You have a 4-0 backhanding. You have a 4-0 put away. No. Everyone is just kind of like this continuous, like, getting better and getting worse maybe in some things, aspect of the game. Like, you probably have like a 3-5 serve with like a 4-5 backhand dink, but then like a 4-0, or, you know, all these things kind of, everyone has different strengths and weaknesses that get better at different rates. And, you know, how you kind of play as overall just kind of like dictates like, you know, how you really play, and like how often you can play your A game. So overall, I think DUPR is doing a good thing. I'm glad they exist. Will I claim my DUPR rating? Probably not until I need to. And I think people should just, official USAP rating is ass. It is ass. Let's not worry about it, everybody. Just play your game. Thanks for asking that question, though. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, I have a... God, come on, Facebook. There should be a fault for dropping the spin serve. Oh, that's a good point, actually. I had to just... Yeah, last night playing racket Chestnut Forks, I had a weird spin serve thing where it kind of hit my paddle. I didn't swing, but I spun the ball with my left hand, and it was a bad spin, and it clipped my paddle. But I didn't swing on the ball. And Kevin Walker, shout out to Kevin Walker, love that dude from West Virginia. He was definitely being like kind of tongue in cheek, but he was like, "Hey, like there goes your serve." he let me redo it. But yeah, I think like my brother was saying at the time, like I feel like you need to actually swing on your serve for it to like count as a serve personally. But again, like I'm just some fool, I don't know. Greg Baker Jr. asks, I have a question. Thank you for asking it. Did you hit or even see any ATPs in APP North Carolina on those cramped courts near the entrance? Did I see? So in the games I personally played, no, I didn't even attempt an ATP. And no, I don't think I even had an opportunity to ATP. And I'll tell you what, like I didn't even feel comfortable going to Ernie. There wasn't enough space really to do so. Also, another thing about those PPA tournaments, I didn't have all my 5-0 matches were unreffed, which is this kind of its own kind of can of worms that we can maybe open later if someone wants to. But yeah, I didn't even feel comfortable earning, and there wasn't even a referee kind of cramping those quarters. I did see someone else attempt an ATP when I was spectating a game, and honestly, it was dangerous. Like, the girl I saw was Sarah Baruta from Lynchburg, Virginia. Shout out to Sarah and her partner, Joe. She went for an ATP and was like 2 feet. Both of her feet were on the other person's court, on the court adjacent to her. So yeah, and she didn't hit it, and it's not because I don't think she could have. I think she honestly kind of psyched herself out and was a little freaked out about the whole dimensions of it. So yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great, and no, I did not see one. Daniel McNally, my brother, beloved brother, he asked, "What's more against the spirit of the game, spin serve or shoving 100 BBs pre-flop from the blind in LO8 and LO8 after a 4 BB raise?" That's actually a funny... Let me actually try to answer this one seriously. I would say the spin serve. Because in No Limit, it's in the name. No limit. Anytime you can go for it. In Pickleball with the spin serve, especially since so many people talk about how, like, oh yeah, Pickleball is pretty much like playing ping pong while standing on the table. And people talk about ping pong all the time, and certainly there's a lot of influence that ping pong has on pickleball. And that is one of those sports that like does ban putting any spin on the ball before you serve. So I actually do feel it's a little bit more against the spirit of the game. So it's a silly question, but I liked it. All right, I guess that's it. Please, if you have more questions, go ahead, ask away. Next question from Jeremy Wickman. Shout outs to Jeremy. He was my officiant at my wedding to my beloved wife Shan, so he's a homie. He also can sling some pickleballs. If you ever need a partner and can find him a babysitter, he will play with you. He says, is the size of the kitchen optimized? That is a very interesting question. And I thought about it for a while, and honestly, I don't know. My like gut reaction is yes. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, how could it, probably not. One thing I do kind of want to mention, which is somewhat related, is the fact that so ever since I started playing pickleball, Facebook has just like suggested to me all these like tennis videos. They suggested to me all these ping pong videos. And one of these videos that they sent me or suggested for me that I watched in its entirety because I'm an addict is one of these 2v2 ping pong table with a soccer ball and, you know, kind of a curved table, and it's doubles like soccer ping pong, right? And one of the things that I noticed about it, and I tried to find the video, but I couldn't find it, but they had a kitchen, and it was a special kitchen. It was a kitchen where like there were some places that if you set the ball in this, it was like a short kitchen essentially. Like instead of kind of imagining like our kitchen line straight, that let's say like it's straight up until maybe the last like 2 feet where the sideline is, and then it would be like kind of more bent in. So it'd be like kind of easier to earn, if that makes more sense. Like they had a shape of their kitchen that wasn't just symmetrical. Or maybe it was symmetrical, but it wasn't like uniform. Like there was a place that if you set your partner up there, that they could absolutely uncork on the ball. So that actually, I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool, and I was kind of thinking like, man, like maybe like how would the game change if you mess with the like you mess with something like that, like you made the kitchen like longer in some places and shorter in other places. Would that make for a more fun game? Maybe. It definitely, you know, it can be more offense or less offense depending on what you need. I think pickleball right now though has a good kind of marriage between offense and defense. And that's kind of what makes pickleball so special, is it does have that kitchen. And, you know, one thing that actually my brother mentioned to me recently was that there was a rule change in spike ball recently, which they instituted a kitchen, which is also pretty cool. So like, hey, I think maybe pickleball is like one of the first sports to kind of introduce that idea of a kitchen. And so we can be proud of that playing pickleball. And is it optimized? Maybe. It would be really fun to kind of like, you know, we talked about a lot of like hypothetical things like rally scoring, freeze points, maybe changing the kitchen, right? Just doing all drop serves. Like it would be really fun just to kind of have like a little like incubator like of ideas where we could just kind of test out like rules and see how we liked it. And you know, maybe we can do some videos of that. That'd be fun. Like if you guys like that idea, you know, let me know. But there are a lot of good ideas that you guys have, and you're right. Is pickleball optimized? Probably not. Probably almost nothing's optimized. So it is cool to kind of keep pushing the envelope to make it exciting. And that is all the questions that people have submitted me before. Let me go to the chat here. Danielle says, spoken like someone who likes shoving 100 blinds pre with garbage. Yeah, guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. So maybe just to kind of wrap it up, I'll talk a little bit about I put out some ideas out there for an AMA. I guess I just want to talk about, I'll ask myself a couple of questions that I've thought a little bit about. The whole carbon drama, I think this would just be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about it. One thing I heard about that people were calling it online was GritGate. which is pretty amusing. So, and to kind of tie it into what we were talking about earlier with like the whole spin serves, which still is just like kind of like a third rail in pickleball. Like it's so, yeah, people are very opinionated about it, and rightfully so. But I actually forgot who mentioned it to me. Like maybe it was PJ, my partner. He told me how he was like, he was very upset about how effective the spin serves were that day when we played, and he was like, it's crazy that they banned your paddle for putting more spin on a ball, but here you can go and just put as much spin as you want on a ball before you serve it, and like that's legal. So it does kind of open up this kind of broader discussion of like what should be the regulations around a pickleball paddle. And I actually try to look up a bunch of these things. Like if you look up the current USA Pickleball rule book, there is a little section about paddle requirements, and they don't like they talk about surface roughness, but they don't actually say like what are the exact parameters that a paddle needs to fall within. One thing you will notice is they see that there is no limit on the weight of a paddle. There is no limit on the thickness of a paddle. Of course, there are limits on the dimensions of a paddle, which I think that everyone can see how that makes a lot of sense. So it does kind of beg the question of, you know, like dimensions probably are like the most important one. Like you can't just have like a paddle the size of a, you know, of a refrigerator just covering half the kitchen, right? Or just in your own paddle. So like it kind of begs the question, like, should there be a restriction on surface roughness anyways? Especially if it seems like, you know, a lot of batches that the manufacturers of all kinds of paddle companies make are not as accurate as maybe they advertise that they are. So if it's this really, really difficult thing to enforce, kind of like Greg Baker Sr. was talking about with the serve, what we're going to have these, everyone's going to have your paddle like tested right before your match with like a roughness tester. Does it make sense just to kind of open that up and say it can be as rough as it needs to be? That's certainly a possibility. And would kind of, I don't know if that'd be good for the game. I think it might be, though. It's something I'm kind of tossing around in my head. Right, there's a lot of kind of controversy with it. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the video where a Yola paddle, ooh, that should be its own, yeah, Yola, Jola, Jula, Hula, I think it's Yola, of a Yola paddle, like a Ben Johns Yola paddle, failing a roughness test. Yeah, I know that there was some controversy with Electrum back in the day with some of their paddles not passing the roughness tests. So it does kind of seem like Carbon has been singled out for what happened to them with their most recent generation of paddles. To have their entire paddles be pulled from the approved list does seem very heavy-handed. One thing I will say too, I noticed that I saw Yana Grechkina at PPA Charlotte. She was one of the top pros that that Carbon had signed, and she was using an Electrum paddle. From most of what I saw that I could tell, people who were used to be using Carbon paddles are now using Electrum paddles, and a couple people are using the new Yola paddles. It's this drama. I don't have any new news. I'm eagerly waiting to see what's going to happen. I mean, like, it definitely sucks with the money. I feel for other people kind of more so than myself. But yeah, hopefully we'll get an answer soon and make things kind of more clear. And just kind of going forward, it's like, even actually Greg Sr., I talked to him in person, or he mentioned to me on Facebook that, you know, he's a Gearbox rep, and he put some investment to to be a gearbox rep, like buying a bunch of paddles to then sell. And with just kind of one, like, you know, stroke of a pen, metaphorically, like USAP can just, you know, take away your livelihood if you're a company, and especially if you're like a rep for that company. Like it can be very disruptive in people's lives. So it's definitely something to consider, and I'm very curious to see how this is going to shake out. I'll probably do another video about it when some new information comes out. Playing with my wife, this was a fun thing that got to happen this past weekend. My wife, Shannon Power, she has pretty much I've been with her longer than I've been playing pickleball, so it was something special to play in a tournament with her. Like, a lot of people ask us, like, they see us, and you know, she's a good player. She probably plays around like a 3.5, 4.0 level. I've definitely seen streaks of 4.5 in her before, though she won't admit that. People ask us all the time, like, oh, do you guys play tournaments? And the answer is always no. And, you know, she always kind of shoots me this little look, and I kind of shoot her this look like, hey, like, maybe one day though. So it was really special to get that done. This past weekend, we got to play on center court, which was really special. It was, pretty surreal. And overall, like, you know, we really held it together. I think we really just kind of talked before the tournament, and we're just like, this is going to be for fun. Like, we're going to have fun. Like, that's our number one goal. And I think a lot of people say that when they play a tournament. And of course, it's hard to follow through on that, especially when things aren't going your way. With the exception of like a couple times that I like lost my temper, I think we did have fun, and it was a great learning experience. And I would play with her again, and I'm just kind of looking forward to playing more mixed. Mixed is a fun game, and it's like a new game. It's kind of course it's pickleball, but the strategy of it is very different, and than men's doubles, right? Like, I actually have talked to my wife before, like, it's cool to kind of hear her break down like women's doubles and hear those dynamics, because, you know, as a guy, right, like, I've never played in a women's doubles game. Just kind of disqualified from that. I've definitely played in games where it's been 3 other girls, but I think you get what my point. So yeah, it's right, like, from what I gleaned from what she's told me about mixed, like, about women's, it sounds different. It sounds fun. Like, honestly, I wish I could play in a women's doubles game. It sounds like a really fun thing. And especially, like, you know, guys are just much more like ego driven, and I think people, you know, very competitive, and girls can be that way as well, for sure. But just in general, like, it feels like women are just, you know, a lot more supportive of each other. Maybe people can disagree with that. David Richardson, what's up? Shout out to David Richardson. Got to give him a special shout out, since he lent me his carbon paddle, or his Electron paddle to play with. So I'll bring you back that paddle with a pro win on it. I'll be your good juju. You can take that and mess around with it at the local parks. So yeah, it was great to play with Shan. Hope we can do it again one day. She probably doesn't want to, but we'll see. We'll see if we can work her. Yeah, and playing my first pro event, it's been a long time coming, and what I mean by that is I signed up for my first pro event in, I guess it was probably like June of 2021, and it was for a tournament in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a PPA there. And sure enough, I got into the pro division. I was super jazzed about my tickets. Like, Shannon and I love New Mexico, so we were just like super jazzed about it. And yeah, about like 2 or 3 weeks before the tournament was supposed to happen, there was an email sent out like, hey, sorry, like it's canceled. Like the pro event's canceled, the tournament's still on, so enjoy. So definitely kind of felt a little railroaded there, and like never really got a good reason why that tournament was canceled. Then December of 2021, I was also registered for another pro singles event in Orlando. Sure enough, it gets postponed to December of 2022, which is still a long ways away from now. So missed out on that one. Still went, had a great time with my boy Nelson in Orlando. And then sure enough, like the third time's a charm, registered for PPA Charlotte, only about 5.5 hour drive here in Virginia. And yeah, just so much anticipation going into it. Like I was so like, you know, it's just like, please don't get canceled. Like, you know, please let me be able to play it. And so, right, sure enough, like on Thursday, the 5th, actually I guess a week from today, got to play, my first draw was against Jake Kusmider. He is from South Carolina. The night before, I went on YouTube, and also it was crazy. They dropped the bracket at like 9:15 p.m. and the tournament was like 8 a.m. the next day. So like not even 12 hours to kind of like prepare or whatever. Like, what am I really gonna do? But it felt a little strange. And I guess maybe part of me thought that it might have gotten canceled or whatever. They kicked me out because my singles rating is like, I don't know what it is. It's not 5.0. So yeah, found out that it was Jake. Looked him up on YouTube. Found him playing some matches, and yeah, I saw a video of him playing singles like a year ago against Anderson Scarpa, and yeah, it was some really high level stuff. So, and he's lefty, so I was like, crap, like this is gonna be a tough first draw here. And yeah, sure enough, like we get there at 8 a.m. I'm not an early morning person, but it's all good. I was, I didn't sleep much because I was just so excited. And got to meet Jake. He's super nice guy. So if you're looking for someone to root for in pickleball, root for him. Especially since he's really good. He has a really, really high ceiling. So yeah, got to play that. Got to play Jake the first round. Yeah, he showed me the next level. Well, I can say it that way. Like he's this next level. His movement. It was like he was just making things look so easy. Like he feel like he was barely moving, and like it really, like he wasn't moving much with his feet. And then sure enough, like, and his backswing was like really slow, but like when he kind of finished the stroke, it was super powerful. Here, I'll be right back. I'm gonna get a charger. We'll try again another time though. But yeah, just the way that Jake was moving was just, it was next level. Like I've already watched it twice, our match, and I'm gonna go back and watch it again in probably like half or quarter speed and really try to analyze like what he's doing and kind of like what I'm doing, and trying to do more of what he does and kind of less of my awkward movements. And yeah, he passed me a bunch up my left sideline. Being a lefty. Anyways, yeah, it was really good. I mean, I ended up scoring 1 point, and like I think I was down 6-0. I was like, Jesus, I'm gonna get bageled. It's gonna be embarrassing. A bunch of people from Fredericksburg and Virginia were there supporting me. So shout out to Junior and Senior and Shan and everyone else who was watching. Like it was definitely special to have those people there supporting me, cheering me on. So yeah, I was down 6-0. I got my first point. I think I called timeout. Kind of one of those cliche things, like Alex Pancake. I don't know where you were at, but like he's one of these guys. He's like a big data guy, and he talks a lot about like he thinks how calling timeouts are bunk. Like there's really not like much value to them. Like people are very results oriented, and like calling timeout is just like, you know, a bunch of bullshit. But sure enough, like I was down 6-0, I call timeout. He serves, he has a serve, right? He serves into the net after the timeout, and my serve after that, after the side out, he returns out. So it was a really huge thing. I got my first point against him. Definitely like a lot of like, I'm not just going to get 11-0 to 11-0 here. And yeah, you know, I played him tough, but I was making too many errors. And yeah, he was just really hard to not get passed by. That's a big part of my game that I gotta, in my singles game specifically, I gotta improve, is like my movement, my coverage, how I'm gonna like split step and break down, and when I'm gonna do that, and my return to serve. It's all like, you know, I'm learning. And the second game, it was definitely closer. I mean, I scored 2 points, but there was one early on in that match. It was like, at one point it was 2-4. I had the serve. I was serving to Jake with 2 serving 4, and we had like our most epic rally. It was just one of these ones where eventually, like, I got up to the kitchen and we had a little cat and mouse, and he popped one up and I rolled it down the left sideline. He like runs it down and like scoops it back up with the backhand, and then I drop it again on him, and then he goes cross court on me, and then I hit my volley into the net. But if I hit that volley, I think it would have been a winner, and it would have been 3-4, and it just would have been like, you know, really like, come on moment, like I can do this, I can beat this guy. But sure enough, I put in the net, and then he beats me 11-2. So yeah, it was really fun. Like, he's just such a nice dude. Like, I didn't even care about losing to him because he was just like such a homie. So I'm really like a big Jake fan now. He had a good tournament. Me and Shan played him in mixed. So he was a pleasure to play against. And the next match, we don't need to go through such a deep dive on it, but there's this guy from Michigan. I never seen him or never heard of him before. Beat him 15-13 in a really close one. I came back from being down 10-6, and yeah, got it done. And the third match I played, like, man, like, the guy didn't even feel like that strong of a player. Well, that's not true. He was a very strong player, but he felt very beatable. Kind of the adjustments I made in the second game were not serving me well. The adjustments I made in the second match were not serving me well in the third match. I was kind of trying to drop it to his backhand side, but he had a very steady two-handed backhand that gave me a lot of trouble. So yeah, he beat me down pretty good, 15-5, and that was the end of that tournament. It was still really fun. Like, I'm looking forward to registering for another pro singles event in the future. And I want to do an APP event. Like, I just keep hearing from people that APP events are better than PPA events. Here we got a question from Richardson. He says, "Great job last weekend. It's been awesome seeing your progress. More pro events in your near future." Yeah, no, I hope so. Yeah, it was not a question, so phrase that as a question. It's like Jeopardy. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna register. I need to do that. Like, I kind of struggle with procrastinating as it is. So in something like registering for events months from now and trying to figure out partners and stuff is not easy. So I gotta get better at that and just like stop psyching myself out and just do it. So I'll see what I can do with my schedule, and yeah, I'll be out there. I want to try an APP. And just in general, like PPA, that was the first time I ever went to a PPA event, ever went to a pro event. And my impressions were overall positive. Like, it was definitely a good experience. I would recommend that if you get the chance to play in it, do it. I will say, I think if it's important to kind of temper your expectations, though. I can just talk about from my experience. Like I came in with an expectation that it would be run more professionally than my local tournaments. And I'm not trying to complain about my local tournaments. Like I love my local tournaments. I'm playing one this weekend down in Richmond. But you know, like the things that people complain about in tournaments, you have long waits. You have maybe the courts aren't great. The court conditions aren't great. And yeah, those are pretty much like the major ones, right? And, all right, no refs, right? Like you're paying for refs, or especially even if it's sanctioned and you're not getting a referee, it's like, so those complaints that I had about my local tournaments, and even then, like I'm not trying to make it sound like I have a lot of respect for the people who put on local tournaments, but PPA I was kind of holding to a higher standard, and I kind of felt like those expectations that I had like weren't really met. All my 5-0 matches that I played were not reffed. And especially when I'm paying extra for like registration fees, it just kind of makes you wonder, like, where's that money going to if it's not for referees? And I think I counted that there was 27 courts at the facility that we played in Charlotte, and 16 of those courts were four pickleball courts per tennis court. So, you know, over half of the courts there were just, you know, very, very challenging to play on. Not something that you want to travel a bunch and pay a bunch of money to play on. Like, you're honestly just better off playing your local tournaments, and you probably even get better conditions than that. And yeah, so it was a little disappointing in that sense. But so I guess kind of more personally, for the way I'm thinking about it, is I'm going to try APP with maybe some tempered expectations. And for me personally, like if I am going to go play another PPA event, which I will, I think I'll only do the pro events, because the treatment I received and like the kind of quality of game and courts that I got in the pro singles event were just a lot higher than the 5-0 events that I was playing, the amateur events. And so, right, if I'm already traveling and paying a premium, like paying a little bit extra for the pro event registration to play like teams that are, you know, like my heroes, my idols, and, you know, like it's hard enough to medal at 5-0 as it is. Like, you know, I went 1-2 in 5-0 men's and 0-2 in 5-0 mixed. So if I'm gonna pretty much 2 and out, I might as well do it at a pro event, is kind of what I'm thinking, and just see that next level. Like, it was really special to play Jake and those other guys that got to play in pro singles. So I'm kind of in the camp that I want to reach for the stars in those, and, you know, after a while, maybe if it gets too expensive or I get burnt out, then we'll reassess. But yeah, overall it was good. Charlotte is a great city. Definitely check it out if you're ever down there. You'll have a good time. It's a great place for young people. That's what everyone said, but I also think it's just a great place for like anyone. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. We got some good like live questions. That's really cool. I wasn't anticipating like many or any of those. So, you know, thanks a lot for watching. Right, like let me know in these comments, like shoot me a DM, troll my YouTube comments, just yeah, give me some feedback, let me know what you think. Do you want to do this again in the future? Like, just definitely looking to kind of connect with my followers and just the pickleball world in general. So just give me some feedback so I can work with it and kind of just put out the stuff that you guys want to do. You guys want me to do. So thanks so much for watching, and thanks for your questions, and you know, it was just really fun, and hopefully we can do it again sometime. Thank you. Signing off. David McNally with 4-Shot Pickleball. Bye. Good night.